Fallout 4 is widely considered to be a very interesting game. It's full of unique and powerful weapons, apparel that will make your mouth water, and NPCs that annoy you down to your last fucking brain cell. I was in the middle of banging Preston's brains out when this idea miraculously popped into my head. I thought to myself, can you beat Fallout 4 with only a tire iron? A few ground rules before we kick this thing off. I'm not allowed to use guns, grenades, mines, other melee weapons, or anything that is not a tire iron. Now that that's settled, our journey begins as I take a look in the mirror to freshen up a little bit. As I was playing with my wife's makeup, I soon realized that this was a look of pure genius. There's no way my enemies won't cower in fear once they've laid eyes on my beautiful face. I answered the door to reveal the Vault Tech man and started customizing my abilities. After naming myself something sophisticated, I dumped all of my points into strength, endurance, and agility, as I would only be using a single melee weapon, those selections made sense. Then I went to check on my Butterfinger that I was saving for a perfect time. I knew that today was the day to consume this gorgeous piece of chocolate. But before I had the chance to do anything, my bitch of a wife interrupted me about plans of going to the park. And then Codsworth called us to the living room to see how we were about to get nuked. Quite exciting, if you ask me. My wife carried my snack with us as we quickly ran to the vault. We were then lowered into the bunker and escorted to our new sleeping quarters. I decided to go night-night, but after waking up and having to take a piss, I saw my wife being murdered. More importantly, these crooks took my chocolate bar. I fell back asleep and awoke once more to realize it wasn't just a nightmare. I was happy about being newly single, but I was also enraged about the crooks who stole what is mine. Nobody lays a finger on my Butterfinger. I then proceeded to hide in fear of being killed by those pesky radroaches. But soon enough, I had evaded their plans of evil and obtained the infamous Pip-Boy. I left the vault and embarked on my expedition towards the retrieval of my precious luxury. I met up with Codsworth, who was excited to see me after these many decades. He soon led me through the town in search of my precious, protecting me from these overgrown fruit flies. After not finding anything, I made my way to the tire iron, feeling very enthusiastic about the anarchy I was going to dish out. A dog was waiting for me to be my guardian angel through this hell they call the wasteland, and so the pooch joined me for the ride. We reached Concord and helped the Minutemen defend against a group of raiders. I finally got to put this weapon to good use. It's more powerful than I thought. The sensation of splitting a skull in two was more exhilarating than you could imagine. I obtained a suit of power armor, and I don't disqualify this as long as I don't use the power armor smash ability. Out of nowhere, a Deathclaw emerged from the sewers he called home. As soon as I laid eyes on this monstrosity of a beast, my legs were shaking, and I hesitated. The four-legged creature charged at me with full force, intending to rip me apart. After receiving one good swing from him, I cowered into a nearby store where surprisingly, he could not enter. I then whacked him repeatedly through the windows, doing a good amount of damage. Dogmeat was desperately trying to help me, but it resulted in being just quite funny because he's a dog, challenging a mutated beast that is literally 100 times his size. Soon enough, I put an end to the Deathclaw, and I spoke to Preston, but just the sight of him made me want to vomit, so I skipped through all the dialogue and went my way towards Diamond City. Along the way, I decided to destroy an innocent robot. I then left my power armor because I ran out of AA's, and I also aided the Diamond City security team in a defense against the super mutants. Whacking away at these creatures that were twice my size gave me a pretty sizable testosterone boost. I mean, not that I needed it or anything. I then sat through a boring conversation with an overweight mayor and a wannabe journalist named Piper. The whole time, Dogmeat was just panting at the sight of this thick mayor's booty cheeks. Moving on, I traded in everything I wasn't going to use to buy Stimpaks. They were going to be my best friend throughout this run. Before heading on to the next step, I witnessed a murder and did nothing about it. Then I tried pickpocketing someone with no knowledge of how to do it. Of course, it ultimately ended in my demise. My next step was to rescue the only man who could help me save my delicious treat, Nick Valentine. A group of so-called gangsters led by Skinny Malone had captured him. Along the way, I made a pit stop at a pond to see if I could handle myself against the one they call Swan. Although I landed a few nice hits on him, I don't think we should be surprised that he easily fended me off. As soon as I arrived at their underground hideout, I was able to handle the first few guards with ease. I thought it would be a good idea to equip one of their outfits so I would blend in with the gang, but they saw right through my disguise, so I had to kill them. To put it bluntly, I used VATS and put in some nice hits that I'm really proud of to execute Dino. Once he was taken care of, I chatted with Nikki for a few before we departed, but on our way out we encountered the leader of the gang. Since my ability to persuade others is complete ass, my only option was to fight, but it didn't really go as planned. his girl hit my body out of the park with one swing. I had to devise a new plan for the second attempt. This time, I thought I would charge only Skinny in hopes that his henchmen would crumble with their leader dead. I mean, it works in Halo, so why not here? But funny enough, he killed me with the butt of his gun. Hopefully, third time's the charm. I wasn't having it this time, so I used Psycho, and I went absolutely berserk on this man. I swatted him with my beloved tire iron over and over until he exploded. I also beat the shit out of his girl. Once that was finally over, I decided to take his clothes. I then became Skinny Malone. When we returned to Diamond City, Nikki interviewed me about the man who robbed me of my prized possession. After giving him the rundown of the situation, I bribed a girl who was clearly not all there, and she gave me the keys to our alleged robber's house. After searching the place, we found something we could track, and so we let Dogmeat lead us to the bandit. The trip included a few super mutants that wanted me dead for some reason, so I had to go out of my way to deal with them. But more importantly, we encountered a Yaoguai. For those of you that don't know, they are basically huge bears that stop at nothing to attack you. Dogmeat decided to go in for the kill, but I don't think he realized what he was getting himself into. He got his little doggy booty beaten almost right away, but since I'm his master, I had to step in and help. The bear was ferocious, so I had to take him out while being cautious. I used the bait and switch method while running around a log to make the fight a little easier. My puppy also stepped in again to help finish the fight. After many head bashings and bone-breaking hits later, we finally killed that huge bitch. We then found ourselves at Fort Hagen. I had to decide whether or not to bring Dogmeat or Nick, so I weighed my options. A dog with only a bite attack, or a person that can wield any weapon. I obviously chose Nick. The synths we encountered were draining my health very fast. I needed to figure out how to slow the dying process, so I added one of the skill points I was saving into the endurance slot, which gave me 20% damage resistance. I was then able to handle myself a little better against those robotic assholes. The time has come to face the man who stole my Butterfinger. He started to engage in conversation with me, but I did not give a single shit. I bopped him in his head to start the fight. The armor I had on looked atrocious, but it would protect me nonetheless. VATS helped me out quite a bit as well, because it lets me land hits most of the time, and at a quick pace. But he wasn't going down without a fight. He and his henchmen fired multiple laser shots at me in hopes to end my existence. I had to spam stimpaks in the middle of the fight because they were melting my ass. Once I secured the regeneration of my health, he used a stealth board to try and evade my hits, but I think that he's actually stupid because I could easily see him. So I killed him, as well as his synth protection that proved not to be a threat in any way, shape, or form. I made sure he knew who was boss, and then I took his clothes and put them on, along with a bowler hat. I then became Kellogg. Since we still had no idea where my beloved snack was, we traveled to the memory den seeking information. We met a doctor there who was eager to put me under for some reason. As soon as I fell asleep, I entered the memory of Kellogg and ran across his brain cells, searching for answers. I then came across an informational scene in which Kellogg spoke with a courser. An older version of my Butterfinger was also present. He looked so delicious. But anyway, I found out my snack was being kept at a place called the Institute. This meant I needed to meet a bioscience major named Virgil in the glowing sea to guide me. I gathered a healthy amount of Rad-X and Radaway and was off. I didn't really care too much for finding power armor or a hazmat suit. I thought I would just wing it. Somewhere in the midst of that shithole they called the glowing sea, I saw a Deathclaw that looked like it was about to mutate, so I had to leave Nick to handle him all alone. I was not trying to get torn limb from limb. My goal was just to sprint through this place as fast as possible. But of course, there were rad scorpions that tailed me, making me quite anxious. Knowing that I was no match for them, I just had to outrun them. After losing them, I made it to Virgil's hideout and spoke to him about how to enter the Institute. He said I would need to kill a courser and take the chip inside of its head in order to travel to this institution. So he sent me to kill one. I traveled to the CIT ruins, and to be honest, I forget where to go every time I come here during a playthrough of Fallout 4. I was very frustrated because I could not find my destination, so I took a break and ate a PB&J, and oh my god, was that needed. I felt 10 times better. So not long after my return, I was able to find Greenatech Genetics, and that's where my enemy would be. Surprisingly, this building was full of a group that called themselves the quote-unquote Gunners, but I call them trash since they weren't anything to brag about. I killed most of them with ease. As long as I keep putting skill points into damage resistance and melee weapons, things will look good for me. But not every gunner was so easy to kill. I came across a shirtless one that thought he was hot shit. Every time I would try to whack him, he would block it and then return a hit. Block and hit, block and hit. I was at my boiling point. He was pissing me off, so I pulled out Vax and completely splattered his brains all over the walls and the floor. He will be the example, so his comrades know not to mess with me. Moving forward, Nick and I arrived at the room with the Courser. I activated a stealth boy before I entered the room, and before he even had a chance to speak, I made him gush blood from all over. And not to sound evil or like a bad person or anything, but I couldn't help myself but to laugh as I was absolutely beating the piss out of that poor guy. Like, it was bad. There was so much blood that it should not have been funny. Well, anyway, I invaded his personal belongings, taking his clothes and Courser chip. I think you guys know what's coming next. I went into my inventory and applied his apparel. I then became the Courser, with the special appearance of my bowler hat. Before I left, I promised a young woman being held captive that I would help her escape. As soon as she got her hopes up and was ready to leave, I split open her skull with my tire iron and stole her only belongings. The Courser chip I had needed to be analyzed, and that meant I needed to find the railroad. I followed the Freedom Trail all the way to an old church. I then entered the secret tunnels, punched a few buttons at random to open the secret passageway, and met the leaders of the railroad. I quickly gained their trust due to my strikingly good looks, and was able to have Tinker Tom hack the Courser chip. I then did a petty side mission to make sure they could trust me. It only involved the Deacon and his bald ass sitting around doing nothing while I killed synths as we searched for some kind of device. After that, I was instructed to build a teleportation station from scratch. Thank goodness I took algebra in high school. I dug up some spare parts in some trash cans, and since I'm a genius, I put together a fully functioning teleportation device. My railroad buddies then teleported me inside the Institute. I was greeted by an elevator that led me to a room where I saw my slightly aged Butterfinger. I was so happy that I finally found it, but suddenly I was approached by an old Butterfinger. I was in shock. Both my chocolate bar and the elderly piece of candy looked exactly alike. That's when he told me this old piece of ass was my sweet chocolate bar, but 60 years older. I couldn't believe it, but there was nothing I could do now. I'm not sure what the feeling I had was, whether it was anger or jealousy, but I wasn't craving Butterfingers anymore. So I met up with the synth that was working with the railroad in order to exterminate the Institute. He said I needed to acquire some information before we advanced this operation, and so I traveled to the Cambridge Polymer Labs. The only enemies there were ghouls that proved to be no match for the likes of me. I then retrieved the info I needed, but I was forced to complete a science project in order to earn my escape. But I just had to place this here, that there, bada bing, bada boom, you know how it is. Once I returned, I had to give the data to a co-worker of mine who was also trying to destroy the Institute. I had to then speak to the elderly chocolate man, and he told me to complete a mission for him in order to gain the trust of the people close to him. I was tasked with meeting an ally in order to retrieve a rogue synth. But as soon as I met him, he immediately got distracted by a vertibird. Since he had the attention span of a walnut, he chased after the enemy, and I had to follow him. I had to wait 30 goddamn minutes for him and Nick to finish shooting it with their stupidly weak guns. I'm really seeing how stupid the Institute is, and I'm quite happy I chose to betray them. Anyway, after getting back on track, I was killed by a mini-nuke that came flying in out of nowhere, completely blowing both of my legs off. Soon after, we found the rogue synth. I told him that his peepee was small, and he gave up out of sheer embarrassment. We then transported him back to home base, and we headed back. A meeting was held to establish the fact that I can indeed be trusted. Little did they know I was double-crossing them the whole time. Mass fusion was my next place of interest. I was tasked with collecting the beryllium agitator. The encounters there weren't anything too hard, just a bunch of wannabe soldiers that wanted to kick my ass for not being on their side. I entered a highly radiated room and attained the beryllium agitator. To my surprise, I was met with defensive security units. This next fight was going to make me pop a blood vessel because it was so annoying. I had to use all of my goddamn jet and psycho just to kill the sentry bot. And to top it off, I had to use all of my Nuka-Cola Quantums as well. This robot drained my health like a fat man drains a milkshake. And can you guess what happened next? 2 fucking Assaultrons. They are the most persistent enemy I've ever encountered. Constantly chasing you, constantly putting pressure on you, challenging every move you make. Oh my gosh, it was not fun, but I wouldn't let this bullshit beat me. I had to persevere, of course. It took so many swings of my tire iron to get the job done, but soon enough, I had destroyed them. The next thing on my mind was leaving that hellhole. I was so done at this point, but I pushed through the pain to try and finish the fight. I arrived back at the Institute to hear the speech the old Butterfinger man gave, and then I inserted the beryllium agitator into this machine. I think it preserves the Institute's life or something. Not that I care. He then told me to kill Desdemona, the leader of the railroad. Too bad for him, I'm siding with her. So I informed her of the plan to kill her. Right after, I pledged my allegiance to the railroad, securing my spot on the team. And then Nick wanted to talk about our advancing relationship and how he was catching feelings. I ignored his bullshit and ordered him to stay by my side with none of this lovey-dovey shit, or I would kill him. It was then time to get rid of the Brotherhood of Steel once and for all, so they would not mess with our work. During a battle with some of my enemies, I took their power armor to enhance my health. Tinker Tom, Deacon, and I then had to clear out a police station full of Brotherhood soldiers. There was bloodshed at every corner of the station. I was killing people left and right without a care in the world. We found a vertibird, we stole it, and piloted it towards the Pridwing with the intent of making it go boom. After we landed, I made sure to equip my new clothes, ultimately becoming a Brotherhood scribe, to stay undercover while I planted the bombs. It was so dumb how easy it was for me to just walk in, plant 3 explosives without anyone suspecting a thing, and then leaving without a single scratch on me. We then got to a safe distance and blew the blimp to little bits. It was quite a sight to see, if you ask me. And now it was finally time to start the nuclear option. I could not be happier. I headed back to Diamond City to reinforce my power armor to almost its full capacity, and I bought as many stim packs as I could carry with the money that I had. It was now time. I teleported to the Institute and let my homies inside so we could ransack the place. Oddly enough, the first thing I encountered was a sentry bot, and we know how goddamn annoying these things can be. But I guess the synths do too, since they were helping me destroy it. Lucky for me, the blast of that robot killed the remaining synths, so it's less work for me. Once we got inside, the first thing I did was kill an innocent scientist. Nothing like the feeling of ending the life of a helpless citizen. I also went toe-to-toe with a gorilla for a little bit. I was waiting for them to fling their poo-poo at me, but it never happened, so I killed them out of disappointment. No one tell PETA what I did to those gorillas. There was plenty of bloodshed throughout the next few fights. The guards did not know what was coming. This tire iron was doing some good work on these enemies, and I was having a great time. Once they were all dead, I ventured up to the elderly Butterfinger's quarters to say goodbye one last time. I asked him to come with me, but he refused. So I had only one option. I had to put him down, and of course I took his clothes, but this old man popped out of them for some reason. Weird. You guys definitely know what's next. I equipped the outfit, and I became my tasty Butterfinger. It was now time to plant the explosive on their main source of power. Fighting definitely was not as easy with this outfit on. Swinging was much slower, and aiming was way harder. But VATS seemed to work just fine, and was still able to pound my foes with hard hits from my trusted weapon. I then sprinted as fast as I could to plant the bomb. I placed it ever so slightly, and we teleported the hell out of there. I pressed the big red button, and the Institute was no more. And after a long journey, I finally beat Fallout 4 with only a tire iron. I'd like to thank you guys for watching. I appreciate every single one of you that decided to click on this crazy, stupid video. This challenge was definitely harder than my last one, but it was really fun to make as well. I'm not gonna lie to you guys, if you hit the subscribe button, I'm sure your peepee will get a little bit bigger. Make sure to hit the like button if you liked it, and hit the dislike if you disliked it. So once again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.